Every day, aftermarket shops change their prices. Do you know how yours compare? IntelliCheck tracks millions of real service prices so you can raise ELR, build trust, and win your market. IntelliCheck. Outsmart the competition.
Were you hoping that posting on social media would fill your service bays, bring you lots of leads, spread out traffic in the shop, work like magic? Here's a controversial fact. Social media isn't just for generating leads. It's for brand building. Brand building takes time and consistency and lots of work. But the good news is it's work that you don't have to do. At Fixed Ops Marketing, we take care of all your social media needs. We write, design, build, and post on your company page on your behalf, regularly and consistently, growing your brand and your audience. And we always stay on brand. Grow your brand, be consistent, and do it smart. Visit fixedopsmarketing.com/solutions, and we'll show you how easy and effective it is.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Fixed Ops Mastermind. Kyle Morissette is stuck in the waiting room. We're going to let him in. We have tonight, we'll see, Russ. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on him. We have Coach Joe tonight. He's got a little presentation for us, and then some great conversation afterwards. So, Coach Joe, take it away. We've got a couple of new folks in the house, so maybe an introduction of yourself before you go.
Yeah, thank you. Coach Joe Clementi, Executive Vice President of Traver Connect, architect of our learning and management tool. It is our Experience Moves. And I'm here today really just to provide a little bit of framework around the cost of unclear expectations. And I want to frame this in a perspective before I get into the PowerPoint. I want to share a recent conversation with a service manager. I'm going to call him Tom just for the sake of this. Tom's pretty solid. He's experienced. He's the kind of guy that you trust, right? You want him behind you trust him in the role. You trust him to follow the procedures. So after a conversation, he called me up and said something that really resonated with me. And that's why I want to talk about this tonight. He had a conversation with a tenured employee that was quite tenuous. And he said to me, I thought I did what we expected or what was expected. And it made me pause because you know what? That sentence really matters. From his point of view, he followed the play, right? He did everything he was supposed to do in the play. But from a leadership perspective, I think he might have missed the mark. So we had to walk it back, not from the result, but the moment before that. And in my eyes, what came really clear was that it was fairly simple. The standard that everyone assumes is obvious isn't always clearly defined. His employee, he wasn't resistant. He wasn't careless. He wasn't even pushing back. The reality was he just lacked a little clarity. And that's really what hit me, because I believe that most performance issues aren't caused by resistance, but they're caused because of unclear standards. And I really want to frame that around tonight's discussion. But before we go further, before I share, I want to talk a little bit about the container. This isn't training. There's nothing here to memorize. There's nothing here to perform, maybe nothing even here that you want to write down. it's a space that I think is really important to talk about what's happening more and more, and then how we define the performance around that, because clarity always comes before change. If you really want to drive change, you have to have clarity. So I'm going to share my screen. Dave, you got that? You can see that?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. So tonight's really about the cost of unclear standards. And I think when I said earlier really resonates, because I don't think leaders struggle because their employees don't care. And I don't think they struggle because there's a lack of effort. I really think that the struggles happen because expectations aren't really aligned. And effort without that clarity, without that specification, it's just noise. And in the end, when it's noise, we remove all the things that actually create action. So I'm going to get into this. And I really believe that most performance issues are not effort problems. Unclear standards are. And uncertainty really changes the way people act, the way they behave, the way they feel about an environment. And it's really important for every leader to understand the connection to that, because most leaders think resistance is the problem, but the reality is it's not. It's unclear standards. And that's what tonight is really about, just getting clarity and specificity. Because I think reality is this: confusion is always a leadership problem before it's a people problem. I want to restate that because I think it's really relevant. Confusion is always a leadership problem before it's an individual problem. Before you can isolate that, you need to understand it starts at the leadership. Because when results miss, our instincts, and it's natural for us to say there's resistance. Hey, who on this call didn't listen? Who didn't buy into our strategy? Who didn't execute? Those assumptions, they feel quite familiar, but it's usually wrong. And I always say this: now, knowing and being aligned are not the same thing. So if Alex should know, but he's not aligned, they're not the same thing. And I really want to spend a couple minutes, and this won't be long, but I really felt it was important to just talk about this framework. When standards are unclear, leaders get really frustrated. They want to know where the friction points are. They want to change the behavior. They want to change the way things are being approached. They want to look at the result. And then teams, the individuals on the teams, they become more defensive. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. And then these results, they just become, they're inconsistent. There's a lack of driven results because there is this sense of just, I don't know why we're not creating that change, why we're not producing the result. Let's talk a little bit about when leaders become frustrated. There's three things that I can point to. There's this level of inconsistency, right? 1 month up, 1 month down. One behavior good, one behavior bad. Then there's this unpredictability to the behavior of the individuals or the team that make up the individuals that make up that team. And then lastly, I really believe this is a disconnection in your culture. When that's more refined, then you have this connection to what the culture, the microculture, should actually look like. So let's talk about when teams become defensive, when they start pushing back as a resilience, because the old ways don't always work. But here's the key: the new ways aren't trusted yet, they're not tested, and they're not behavior driven. And the last thing I'll say about that is, this is what happens when anxiety rises. When anxiety rises, the learning opportunities shut down. People just, they close their mind off. If Melissa's going to have a coaching environment with me and there's this level of anxiety, I'm not in the mode of learning. Most leaders skip what I call the messy middle. The messy middle is the stage and the progression of those expectations where they meet performance. So let's talk about what happens with the results, because everyone's chasing a result, but here's what happens. The individuals feel like they're chasing a ghost. There's a constant moving target. And I bet many of you that are in a fixed operations environment, talking to service managers like we are, that's the one thing they'll tell us. I'm chasing a ghost. It's always changing. I saw a post the other day from a pretty experienced service manager, and he just went on about that constant rule of change is driving. I think the highest numbers I saw more recently was upwards of 48% turnover in service managers. We haven't even talked about technicians yet. And then the relationship with the customer becomes more transactional. It's not transformational. It's not creating an environment for your team member and your customer to have an experience. It's just merely transactional. What have you done for me? Pay and leave. That's not intentional. That's a signal. And the last thing I'll say about that is this is where individuals begin to quietly quit. And I don't know if you know that, but this little device that sits on their desk or in their pocket or on their tool chest is like an open file cabinet. They can go in at any time and see what job openings are around. The moment they become disconnected or frustrated is the moment they start looking for another opportunity. And by the way, when they start looking, they start seeing things that don't exist in your current environment. Just keep that in mind. So I think as a leader, you got to ask why. What's our current state? Why is it the way it is currently? Talk to your team members, talk to people, understand where there's a lack of clarity, and then figure out how to transition through that progression of connecting the behavior with the desired result or the desired outcome, not the other way around. And then lastly, you have to paint this picture about what's next. What does the future look like? And if Tanner is a part of that future, we want to be able to paint a very clear and compelling why so that Tanner can see himself in that future. And when you're talking about performance, that's vital.
Quick break in the action. Let's talk parts. Yeah, that corner of the dealership most people don't look at until there's a fire. Parts Edge helps you clean up that mess. Smarter inventory, better margins, and no more guessing games. It's like giving your parts manager a crystal ball, except this one actually works. Spiffy. You can manage your mobile appointments, optimize your service routes, track inventory, and process payments. All with Spiffy, and you can learn more at spiffy.com. You ever wish you could inspect every car like a tech with X-ray vision? UVI is like an MRI for your car. UVI doesn't miss a thing. Scans the tires, the underbody, body panels, and wheels for scuffs in seconds, giving your team instant, actionable intel without slowing down the lane. That's not the future. That's UVI, and it's live in stores today.
I'll roll on to this because everyone wants to look at profitability. How do we measure success? Profit. How do we measure growth? Profit. How do we measure our what we're going to brag about on LinkedIn? Profit. And I believe that it's an outcome. It's the byproduct. And really, experience is the engine. This is what drives it. Outcomes don't drive behavior. What people experience does. What they experience daily, what they go through in their microculture teaches them this. This is what this place really works and looks like from the inside. And standards change that. So I want to talk a little bit about standards, and I want to make sure that I put this in the context because they don't live everywhere. They're concentrated, in my opinion, in 3 places within that microculture. The first one is the write-up. And when you see this on the screen, your first inclination is, hey, a write-up means this is punitive. A write-up means I'm having a conversation about Dave, why things aren't going the way they should. When in reality, a write-up is directional. The write-up should be the conversation that sets what the future looks like. Are we clear on what Stephen expects as he goes forward? Do we understand what Stephen wants to paint for himself in the future? So I just challenge you to rethink and reframe the lens you're using as it relates to a write-up. And the next disconnection is it shows up in the customer experience. I've said this many times. I preach about it because I think it's really important. You're either transactional or you're transformational. Transactional experiences do not drive customer loyalty. Tractional experiences do not build retention. And by retention, I mean both team member and customer. And then lastly, what's your follow-up procedure? Is there follow-up? If we're going to have a conversation in reference to performance, are we clear and what that follow-up means? Who's responsible and who's going to reinforce that behavior? Unclear standards, they don't live everywhere. It's really important to keep it visible in front of you so that everyone understands that moment. I believe it's like a little puzzle. I've used this often in many of my learning and development sessions because resistance is like trying to do a puzzle, but a crossword puzzle, but you're missing a letter. Once you identify it, you got to see it as an opportunity, and then you got to be clear and specific. So if we see where there's a disconnect, how do we add clarity and specificity to it? It's really important. If you can't describe it clearly, you can't coach to it consistently. Setting expectations is not a standard. It's predictable. You can create predictability out of it. Let me just frame it this way. It's time specific. It's the 3 W's, what, why, and when. Many of us can talk to the how. Many of us can even define what I expect of you, but very few of us can be clear about why. What's the next steps? And then I'll restate this. If it can't be described clearly, it's not going to change. And what we're talking about is behavioral change, right? In order to drive the outcome, you need behavioral change. And I think that's really important as a leader, is understanding that if it's not clear to me, it can't be clear to them. So let's talk a little bit about standards. Standards are not rules. They're not put in place to be punitive. Rules punish, but standards, they're guidelines. They're the guardrails. Standards are, well, let me define it this way. Standards are really simple. They're the decisions that you made in advance. So emotion doesn't lead in the moment. What happens when we become emotional, when we feel like there's this tension and anxiety? We have this sense of shutdown. When we're emotional, we can't be logical. They create this sense of consistency and behavioral standards, and they allow an opportunity for when you are coaching to be more neutral, to be more centric on the outcomes you're trying to create. And I'll say it this way again, because I think it's worth repeating. When standards are clear, all these things fall into place. Accountability, responsibility. There's more opportunity to coach. It becomes easier to have those conversations. And this is what happens because you're creating a microculture within the culture. You actually create results that are more predictable. We don't have to guess. We know what the outcomes will be. Remember that clear standards from the leadership role, you create that sense of self-security for a team member, that safety, that sense of, I don't have to guess who I have to be today. So let's talk about how to apply it in reality, right? Here's number one rule. What are you assuming that people just know? If I'm assuming that Kyle just knows because he's experienced, he should just know, we're missing the clarity and specificity. And then the standards that live in your head because you've been doing it X amount of days, 10 years, 4 years, 3 years, if they live in your head, but they don't exist in writing, then we certainly aren't clear enough with the individual.
No, Coach, I expect you to know exactly what I'm thinking.
Exactly. And I should behave in the way that you have in your head.
Of course.
And when we do that, we have this friction that exists because I'm speculating, I'm guessing. And these reflect the patterns of behavior.
But it's easy to clarify too, isn't it? Like, because what somebody says and what I hear a lot of times are really not the same thing. So if I say, Coach, what I heard was this, is that correct? No, that's not what I meant at all. Would you explain it again?
Yeah. And in that environment, Russell, you're right on point. In that specific example you gave, it gives that person more space.
Exactly.
Now they have the ability to say, well, oh, I wasn't quite clear on your direction. And it's really helpful for the individual. And I'll say this to Russell's point, the outcome is really clear. You don't have to guess. People don't resist standards. What they resist is when they're chasing ghosts.
Right.
What they resist is when the rules change.
Would you say that things are much clearer when that happens? It helps solidify the relationship and communication, and it lowers the temperature, anxiety, and defensiveness. Do you agree?
Amen. You hit it right on the head. When people become defensive, when they create this anxiety or this confusion, then what will happen is you build a microculture, and the microculture says, "Oh, you don't have to do that. The way we've always done it is this way. Never mind what Russell said. Just go ahead and do it this way." And so the results then become unpredictable because everyone's chasing their own ghost. There's not alignment. And we don't have clear rules of engagement, if you will. So I'm going to let this slide really speak for itself. I believe this in my heart. When the language changes, everything else changes with it. For everyone on the team. So I figured I'd wrap it up and just give you just what I see as just don't waste this moment. I think it's really important. Name what the standard is, design what the experience should look like from the customer side to your side, regardless of who your customer is. Define what great looks like with your team so that they're a part of the solution. Build trust. Remember, trust is foundational in any team. Without absence of trust, you don't have a team. But trust is really important because when you remove the guesswork, people don't have to assume this is what Joe means by this. This is what I'm supposed to do. So remove that guesswork. And I always love the phrase, hold on to tension, because I think it's really important. When we remove the emotion and you coach the behavior, you're actually speaking to the individual without emotion. I don't have to be aggressive towards you, Russell, because if the goal is to produce the desired behavior and you're open, you're not frictional, then we have the opportunity to address this without emotion. And those become more attainable, right? And then lastly, lead through that change, because that messy middle is when everyone fights against it, when everyone is feeling like, hey, we're making this change because, so-and-so said we had to do this, right? This is the change. This is the environment. But so-and-so has been here 30 years and man, I better follow his or her path. That's when you get that microculture.
All right, we all know about warranty nightmares. Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated. If your warranty process still involves sticky notes, tribal knowledge, and late night claims rejections, you're leaving money on the table. Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated brings clarity, compliance, and cash flow to your warranty game. They speak fluent OEM, and they've got your back. Hey, I want to encourage you to take a visit over to our partner, Target Automotive, at target.com. That is great until you're drowning in it. Target turns that chaos into clarity with dashboards that actually make sense. Fixed ops leaders finally get what they need: real-time, drill-down insights without the spreadsheet migraines. It's not just business intelligence, it's Target.
This is one of my slides, Dave. It's not a commercial. I won't leave it up very long, but we do have a thorough learning and development strategy. So that's the end of the slide. I thought we'd stop there, Dave, and then open the floor up for any discussion. It was quick, short. I think I hit the 20-minute mark.
Beautiful.
Well done.
Good
Coach.
stuff, Joe.
Awesome.
So, Joe, let me ask you something. Can I make a comparison? Would you compare standards in a company to morals within somebody's life? Are they almost like the morals of a company?
That's a great question. And yes and no. Because morals
Well, which one is it? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the easy answer is yes, right? Everyone should have a sense of morality. But when you're in a business, your morality is fractional. It's in different environments, right? It is displayed externally, whereas an internal person is your own morality. So I don't know. I just have this. There's this. It's fractional is my best way to answer that.
And Alec in the comments just said standards are the minimum with a question mark. Are they the minimum?
Standards is the framework. How's that? It's the foundation. You can't, think about it this way. You know how buildings were built in the old days? They always started with a cornerstone. So if you look at buildings built in DC, if you didn't know this, it looks like Alec does. The cornerstone is what builds the rest of the building. And the way that buildings were made in the old day with brick and mortar, they always began with a foundation of a cornerstone. And that's what standards are. They're the cornerstone of the foundation of that organization. Without those, right? Remember, they're not punitive, right? They're not rules. They're standards that we live by. So if you're going to be polite, courteous, helpful, friendly, kind, whatever words you want to use, that should be a standard within that organization. If I come to Stephen with a concern and Stephen shrugs me off, that's the standard we're setting. And it could be likewise if I'm a peer of Kyle's and I go to Kyle and I say, Kyle, hey, I don't like the way that Stephen's handling this and he's just wrong. And then I'm just looking for a partner rather than an alignment and clarity. Then what happens? Now Kyle will go and recruit Tanner, and Tanner will recruit Missy, and Missy will recruit Jack. Also,
then you have a freaking rebellion on hand,
Yeah, we have a microculture, right? And that microculture is your standard.
And understanding too, as I'm listening to you, Coach Joe, is that sometimes your own expectations won't be met and you have to have your own standards for how you're going to work and whether or not that is the standard of the company you work for. And is it agreeable to you or is it not agreeable to you? And we see that in dealerships, we see that in corporations, we see that across the industry. And that's something that I struggle with because I have a set of standards for myself. They're a little higher than they probably should be because then I try to hold everybody else to the expectations, and sometimes I fail miserably, and so do the rest of us. But understanding that about yourself and where you can give yourself grace and give your company grace as companies are growing and as we're growing and learning and all of those things that go along with that.
That Gretchen.
Brilliantly said. It was just awesome. Thank you for adding.
So I want to say something about what Gretchen just said, because I have high standards too. Probably, well, they're high. I've experienced it many times in my life, and what I have found was a lot of anxiety sets in when people don't hit those marks. But those are my marks, not their marks. And what I realized was not so much the expectation, and what I'm looking for is an alignment with Gretchen if it's the same thing or anybody else, but uh, uh, it's not the level of expectation where somebody says your expectations are too high. It's more for me how I act and react to them when they're not achieved, or I don't see that coming out in somebody else, and it's okay. And I love them where they're at, and then slap them around a little bit and move on down the road. I left the slapping a bit out. I really don't do that, but is that kind of like what it is for you, Gretchen?
Not anymore. That was back in the day, right, Russell?
Yeah, I
Back in
have
the
some
day we
stories
did
about that
Yeah.
too. Anyway,
No, absolutely, Russell, right? Because I have such high expectations for myself that when I was younger, I had to learn not to hold others to those expectations because it doesn't work for another person. It only works for me. And then to your point, right, Russell, accepting them as they are, where they are in their journey of
Mhm.
growing and learning. And then what can I do to help them along with that? Not necessarily to meet my expectations, but because I do find, and people in the room might find this as well, I tend to put a higher expectation on people that I feel have the potential
Yes.
to be
Yes.
more and
Yeah.
do more. When
Amen.
I expect more out of
100%.
them because I see them and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're an incredible individual and you could accomplish A, B, C, D. They may not see it. And those expectations get so high, they can't meet them because they haven't seen their potential yet. So then you got
Or
to
they don't believe it themselves.
exactly, right, Kyle? You got to reach in, you got
Exactly.
to grab it out of them.
Yeah,
Right
and
on,
we have to
Kyle.
be really careful in that situation as well, because when we have this high expectation of another person, it becomes subjective. And that means I become judgmental. So in that example, I'm saying, well, Kyle's not living to his potential. He's just lazy. Rather than understanding the true foundation, which is he hasn't yet realized that true potential. And my responsibility is to pour enough into and coach that person so they can realize their potential. But
Well, they have to be coachable too, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they have to be, right? That's part of it. But I
Hey,
think,
Coach,
yes, sir.
if so, let's say somebody does realize that they have a potential, and you have a conversation, and have that conversation, like where do you think you can get to? What do you what are your aspirations, whatever it may be, right? And they're hitting that struggle point, and you're trying to, I think you've kind of done it with me a bit, maybe not knowingly, but how do you get them to, when they hit that point where they're frustrated and thinking, hey, do I keep going or what do I do? That's a real point that needs to be handled for whoever that is. How do you normally do that? I maybe that wasn't very clear. I hope you understood the question.
I would say meet them where they are. Once you understand where they are, you can help them get to where they want to be. But it's not Missy and Robert will adhere to this. I always say it's not a light switch. You don't just walk in the room, flip the light switch on, and all of a sudden Kyle gets it. You got to meet them where they are.
But he should,
willing.
Coach. He should get it.
Should.
No,
right?
I'm just
That's
kidding.
what everyone
Yeah,
says, right? I'm
exactly.
sorry, Wendy, you've been sitting there patiently. My apologies.
You're muted.
Unmute.
Tell me, testing 1, 2. Can you hear
We
me?
got you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
I
are,
got
beautiful
I
people.
don't have my AirPods. I have, because they keep dying. I burned out 3 sets today. I've been talking for a minute. Yes, good evening, beautiful people. So, a couple of things, and you guys inspire me. I just thought of a different analogy about teaching an elephant to climb a tree. If the ultimate goal is to get the apple on top of the tree, or to get the nut on the top of the tree, or whatever the squirrel and the elephant both like, the squirrel can scramble right up the trunk and get up there and get it, boom. The elephant is going to have to wrap his trunk around the thickest bush and break that sucker down and grab the fruit that way, right? But either way, you're meeting them where they are with their own skill set and their own place in their journey. And you find the way to, and you inspired this. I think it's pretty cool, right? But we have to get them right where they are. But what I wanted to add was that, Joe, this resonates with me so much. And that's why we're all tribe, right? That's why we're all in the same rooms and we're all helping to the same end to provide solutions for our dealers. So whether it's helping an outsourced BDC that's taking on stores and they have no infrastructure, or whether it's a dealer group where you want to go in, Joe, or I want to go in and launch a team, or you want to go in and do training, or whatever it is that any one of us want to do, you have to start with a strong foundation. To your word, a cornerstone. To me, you have to, what I always do on site is I start with mindset training, but first, where do you see yourself? What's your goal? What's your why? Where do you see yourself a year from now? Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I don't do it with my virtual teams, quite frankly, because they're offshore and there's so much poverty. I don't want them to have to share their personal whys or this or that, because there's a lot of poverty, et cetera. But my point is also mindset training, so you can understand that there are perspectives other than your own. But I think to be clear is to be kind. And I think when setting that foundation, standards bring clarity. And that is kindness, because it also tells your team what to expect and what you will expect from them. And you all start on an even keel at the same level, and then you start erecting the sides of the foundation. You have the foundation, you start building equal strong sides, but you build them strong, each one in their own right. And now when we have to manage, sorry, I'm going to use the A word, now that we have to learn how to manage and train hybrid teams consisting of agentic AI and AI agents and humans, and have each one in the right role, that's the same thing. We have to learn to automate that which can be automated. If one person is more of a hunter than a farmer, then you put them on sales BDC, right, Joe? Right, Coach?
Yeah.
If they're more of a farmer or whatever, then for me, they're service BDC, hands down. Because for me, service BDC is driving traffic, same as sales BDC, and we ensure the smooth transition to a turnover to the sales department and variables, or the service advisor at the desk that can check them in for their visit, right? And then they can suggest other services with, the VMPI, whatever part of the process. So my whole point is that I thank you. That resonates with me 1,000%. And boy, what a fun year it is to be alive, right? Learning all these new solutions. And that's what I got.
That's
what
awesome.
I got. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. That was fantastic.
Look at how quiet everybody got after that.
I have a question for Russell Hill.
Oh, okay. A curveball. Russell Hill, you're muted.
Yeah, he's busy over there.
Oh, he's busy. He's talking to someone.
No, I was talking to all of you. You just couldn't hear me.
Was it great what you said?
All right. Well, that makes it.
I had the wrong expectation. Yes, go ahead.
So, Mr. Hill,
oh man, okay, Mr. Hill does not work. I'm just saying.
Today, so Tanner and I have been on the road this week. It's our first real road show, where we've been going out to dealers, and something that I need from you is something that I get every time I see you. I need that Russell Hill statement.
Oh, okay. If nobody told y'all that, if nobody told you they loved and appreciated you today, Russell Hill just did.
Thank you, buddy. It's been a challenging week, so I needed that. Thank you.
So you're on the road cold calling, is that right?
A little bit of cold calling, but we had some stuff, pre-set up because we made some phone calls, and it's an adjustment, and we've gotten to meet a lot of good people, good operators that are working hard and seeing what's happening in stores, and that's why I wanted to come to this. But it's tough being on the road and trying to figure it all out. So
I love it, man. I mean, that's where the enthusiasm and energy and excitement is, being in front of people instead of Zoom calls all day long.
Would it help if we
Yeah.
serenaded you, Kyle? On the road again?
No, I mean, it's super cool. But I mean, you're going outside of, I mean, it's definitely outside of my comfort zone, right? So going in and interrupting somebody's day when I know what that looks like from my side, and taking the things that I've learned on FOM and some of the other shows that I've been on, and a lot of the things that Coach has taught us along the way. So when I heard Coach was going to be presenting tonight, it that always excites me because I know I'm going to get something to take home.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
But yeah, man, I'm super psyched for NADA. I know most of us are going to be there, or have people that are going to be there. So really excited to meet a lot of the people that I haven't been able to shake your hand or give you a hug or whatever. But thank you, Russell. That made my night.
Well, thank you. And you said something that's really one of the most important things in my life that has propelled me, and that is, life is at the edge of your comfort zone. The things that you learn from being out there, not from being comfortable. You don't learn in your comfort zone. You don't. I'm not talking about the creature comforts and a lazy boy chair. I'm talking about stretching, taking risk, experimenting, trying new things, talking to people, engaging, accepting the fact that, hey, man, it is. I mean, I'm telling you, that's like carpe diem, baby. You know what I mean?
Wendy, you got
Yeah.
one more thing?
Oh, I was going to type it, but yeah, I'd rather speak it. Okay,
Yeah.
so another thing I wanted to add is I believe that, I'm looking so much, and all of us are, especially in the fixed operations world, where customer service experience, it has to be absolutely stellar. And it has to be one of the cornerstones, right, of what we do, Joe, to use your words, in fixed ops. And to that end, when it starts at home, meaning our home team, meaning those of us that we lead, it naturally comes from within, the treating one another the right way, good standards for performance, for this, that, the other. We build a good culture. It automatically transitions over into the customer service experience that we deliver to our dealership service customers and prospective buyers, because it comes from within and it's who we are. And it's not faked, and it's not it is a learned thing, but it comes from within. And I also want to tell you, I can't tell you how many agents I have recruited out and in teams I've launched and everything else, and they call me Mama Shark. And I can't tell you how many times they come back to me and they say, Mama, the culture is so bad there. And this is another outsourced call centers out there. Mama, it's just toxic. I don't want to work there. They are making $2-3 more an hour than they did with me, but they just can't take it anymore. So it's really bad out there, you guys. It's really bad. And people are screaming for attention and for solutions. So it needs to start with those of us in leadership. We absolutely have to make it our non-negotiable. See what I did there, Gretchen? Now is non-negotiable, right? Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, it's got to be who we are. It's got to be all about CX, and that is just the cornerstone for everything else we do.
Right on.
Is Mama Shark this one? Because I know it was Baby Shark.
No, it's not that Mama Shark. It's like if Mama goes into Mama Shark mode, be careful because she might just bite.
It's like Mama Bear mode, Kyle.
It's tough love. Put it that way. Tough love.
There's an old adage, right? Inspect what you expect. And if you really want to know what your culture is, inspect it. Ask about it. Go deeper. When you're talking about standards and expectations, your microculture drives everything else. I've researched it ad nauseum. It's a fact. Culture drives profitability. Period. Look at every great organization, and the one thing that you can always point back to is culture. If you go into a partner where they're struggling and there's a disconnect, it always starts at the culture.
You can
Inspect
feel
what
it
you
too,
expect.
can't you, Coach? You can.
100%. It's like a lifeblood, right? It flows through the veins everywhere. And if you got a microculture, the microculture could be just as destructive. That's why I believe in this philosophy of human development, creating a structure where there's performance conversations. Because when it's occasional, then it's punitive. So, old adage, inspect what you expect.
And can I add a capper on that? Because you just inspired this in me again. Inspect, but also introspect. I mean, introspection, right? I mean, when you uncover things within your culture like that you see in others, we have to take a look inside as well and make sure that
100%.
we're actually delivering and making people feel the way that we want them to then make their other people feel. So yeah, a lot of introspection. I've learned a lot about grace and about all kinds of stuff. And the more I listen to everyone else, the more I listen to you, the more it not only validates what I already know to be true, but gives me different ways to look at it and to dig deeper to uncover any challenges, even within myself, that are keeping me from improving the culture for those that I lead. So yeah, it's a whole circle. It's a full circle you come, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Introspection is really important because remember, your team members don't listen to you as much as the words you say. They look for your actions. They look for what you accept as a behavior. They look for how you behave under duress, in stress moments. They look to how you have accepted, and we've talked about this often on this particular meeting, the 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 cancer that is destroying the microculture. And they look and see that, man, you've accepted that. It is that person can control everything because they're the best, or they've been here the longest, or they make the most money. We find that more in variable operations than anything, but it does exist. Thank you. Great point.
Come on, somebody's got something. Come on now. Come on. What's we got more to give. Let's go.
Tanner,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Tan. Come on, Tan man.
I mean, I want to touch on the
I have
culture and the micro
lost my
culture
audio.
aspect, and I kind of lived it. I won't name drop, but I was working at a store, and the culture started off great, and then we had some team changing go on. And a lot of times, you hold yourselves, and it kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier. Like, I hold myself to a very, very high standard, and I know Kyle sees that on a day-to-day basis with me. But sometimes you get so involved in your own standards, you don't realize the standards around you falling until it can become extremely noticeable. And y'all touched on it a second ago when you talk about you can feel it, because when I was able to get out of that place and get to a much better cultured service center, I went back to see some of my old friends to see how things are going, and not being dramatic, but I walked into that service drive and I could feel it. I was like, good Lord. And looking at the people I
100%.
used to work with and how I thought day to day everything was okay, and they looked dead inside. So it was just kind of one of those crazy moments where I was able to look back and go, man, like, sometimes you don't realize you're in the thick of it until you get out of the swamp. And I think trying how important it is as a leader to stay grounded, and being able to see that happening. But the problem that some leaders run into is they will, you know, sometimes they want to be a friend more than they want to be a leader. And that's how sometimes some favoritism and things come up. And
Well,
and I saw that firsthand, and I think it's a very thin line that you have to follow to maintain good relationships without going too far.
sure. I think that's well stated, and there's so many there's a dichotomy there, right? I mean, part of being friendly does not mean that I need to be your friend as a supervisor. It just means that I'm going to have clear standards. And Gretchen said it so well, like you have your own standards. You're going to accept the standard of a culture that's destructive. You've accepted that standard, to Gretchen's point. And then if your standards are high, then you say to yourself, I'm no longer willing to be in that environment that is so destructive. That's why I love about what Gretchen had to say in relationship to that. I was having a conversation with another friend who's out in the industry, but elsewhere, and that discussion was the culture has changed so much. I'm no longer happy. I still have my why. I still love what I do, but the culture is so destructive. And my coaching for that person was, then you have to find what drives and motivates and aligns you with your passion again. Passion is a little bit deceptive because we can all be passionate about something. Now, I'm passionate about golf and I suck. So you
Me
gotta be
too.
careful what your passion is.
That's such a humbling game, isn't it, Coach?
Just kind of woo, just put it out there, coach.
It's so funny though, Coach, that
Yeah.
you use that word passionate because I hate the word passionate. I hate when people say, Gretchen, you're so passionate about the car business. No, I'm not. Okay, passionate by Webster's dictionary is unbridled, uncontrolled emotion. I am not unbridled or uncontrolled about the way I feel about this business. And so it's an interesting word for me because I know how it's used, but my brain sometimes a little bit more literal than it needs to be. So when I hear that, it's like, no, it's not an unbridled, uncontrolled emotion. I'm very controlled about what I do. I know the impact I want to make. I know the influence I have and I can make. All of the things rolled up into it. So it's interesting. But yeah, golf. I like it too. I'm no good at it, but man, put me in the cart so I can hit a little ball around. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You just,
And I like riding a Harley, but I'm not going to trust myself on it by myself. So yeah, keep me in the parking lot for now. And Arizona roads are pretty treacherous.
That's why we got Fred.
Well, yeah. No, that's why I got a razor because Fred doesn't ride.
All right.
lot of interesting views here, and I agree with a lot of them. But I kind of take some things that I look at with culture. Culture is developed by process, and I'm going to give an analogy of somebody that's been able to develop culture, process, and a winning everything, and that's Nick Saban. If you look at the tree that's come off him, the amount of coaches, all four coaches that were in the final four of the college football playoff are from his tree. And the one thing, if you go back and ask each coach, what is the one thing about Nick Saban that you always knew was going to happen? First of all, you know what the goal was, you know how we're going to get there, and I'm going to drill in the process that we're going to use to make that. And if you deviate from that, you won't be part of our system. And Nick Saban does the same thing every day, every week. And it's a repetition of developing that process. And through that, culture starts to come. And that's, as I've seen programs built, sales teams built, it comes from what is the goal? Then what's the process to get to that goal? And are you bought in or not? If you aren't bought in, then you better get out of the way and move on and get somewhere else. That's my
yeah,
two
I love
cents.
your point. It's all consistency, right? And if you follow Nick Saban, like it sounds like you do, he talks about never checking the scoreboard. He never looks at the outcome. It's teaching, execute the play that's in front of you, be in the
Yep.
moment. And when
Yep.
he teaches that, the repetition isn't, hey, play, then it's play the next play. It's not wait till the score, wait till they're up or wait till they're down and then react. And that's what we do in the environment we go to service managers, say the scoreboard's down, you better pick it up. We're not repetitious. We're not redefining what that pathway is to accomplish just one play at a time. I've watched thousands of hours of Nick Saban, and I'll tell you, that's the one thing that's very consistent.
And
Without a doubt.
colleges are a great place to take leadership lessons from, because the college teams are turning over their entire player organization every 4 to 5 years. Everybody, 100% turnover. And yet there are programs that are successful year after year after year after year. And it's not because of it. Obviously, the players have to play, but they're performing for a system and a set of coaches and a set of standards, if you will, Joe, that are consistent.
And it's interesting you say that, because it goes back to, I think we said it a couple of weeks ago. People don't care what you know till how much you care. And when you find a coach that wants you to buy into a system, has a system, and drills it in every day, you look at those coaches, you look at those players that played for those coaches, they'll go to their grave for those coaches, because they know they care and they're going to put the time in to help you develop. And I'll help anybody who wants to help themselves, but I'm not going to try to drag somebody along. I want to have people that want to be part of that culture and that goal and that process, and they're willing to buy in, because once you get buy-in from people, it's amazing how a culture changes very quickly.
You can get done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right,
thought
everybody,
everybody.
come to the end. Sorry, Kyle. I was just going to make sure we were cutting this off here. Kyle's
Yeah,
going to take us out for the night.
Take us
So-
out.
Thank you, everybody, for being
Sorry
here.
for
take us
interrupting.
home. No, you're good. As always, Coach, bringing the heat. Thank you very much for
Yes.
tonight, as always,
Thank you.
and we look forward to more. Thursday, we have We Are. If you haven't been, you should definitely stop by. This week, we have an open discussion. It is going to be hosted by Kaylee Filio, one of my favorites. So please stop by. That it is at 2 p.m. on the Eastern Coast in time, which, if Tanner tells me, is not the best coast, but Dave and I disagree. So 2 o'clock on Thursday, East Coast time. We also have on Monday a kind of cool episode of the podcast. We are going to have the Bridges family on. So a family in the business, starting with Wayne, who is a 30 plus year technician, his daughter, who is an advisor, and son, who is a salesperson. So
Right on.
that'll be running at 11 o'clock on Monday morning. If you want to see that or download it or whatever, we'd love to have you.
And all at the same dealership.
All at the same dealership. Yes.
Wow. I'd like to know.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that culture in play.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's a really cool setup that they have there, and what that store is doing. The ownership there is definitely somebody that we should be looking at for sure. But that said, other than that, we will see you on Tuesday again. Let's remember to if we all get together, we can be great together. Have a great night.
That's right. Wow. Thank you very much.
Have a great
Awesome.
night, everyone.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Night.